You're listening to the Maya Life Podcast, where we learn, explore, and discover the pathway to perfect health through 5,000 years of medical wisdom from mindfulness, Ayurveda, yoga, and secret healing traditions Western medicine has ignored. Now, your host, Ayurvedic health counselor, Heather Johnson. Hello, it's so good to be with you today. I wanted to talk about something pretty fundamental to Ayurveda. I've had a lot of questions about what Ayurveda is, what it isn't, but I wanted to get to the root core of why we even care. Why do we care about Ayurveda? What are the goals of Ayurveda? Ayurveda has two goals. One is to keep the body in a state of health and free from disease. Second goal, to show us how to use health as a part of the path to enlightenment. Enlightenment's kind of a big word. It kind of sounds woo-woo, but it really just means bringing the body and the soul into union to become your best, highest self. So I think we can look at it and think, yeah, that's definitely something I would like. I would like to achieve enlightenment. Some of the old ancient Ayurvedic texts called the Karaka Samhiti is one of Ayurvedic's basic medicine texts. And it talks a lot about disease and where disease comes from and why we have disease. And Ayurveda really is in the science of studying and eradicating disease from our life by balancing us with nature. So, I wanted to look today at the causes of disease and suffering. Why do we suffer? Why do we experience disease? Why can't our bodies just maintain their perfect health up until the time that we leave this earth and go on to the next life? Well, that would be ideal. I think that would be nice for all of us. But we're really not going to be able to achieve that because we are mortal and we are not perfect. So, let's look at three main causes of disease. Initially, though, there's an underlying cause. We are made up of a physical body. Yes. We are also made up of a spiritual body or subtle body, and there's even deeper layers to our being. But when we forget that we're not just our physical body, that's when we open the door up to all kinds of disease. Now, that seems to not make sense. You think, well, no, I inherited cancer from my parents, it's in my genetics. Or I got diabetes because I was eating too much sugar, or because that's just in my family. Everyone's diabetic, it just happens. But if we look at the root cause, pretend you see a big tree in front of you. All of those symptoms of diabetes and cancer and high blood pressure and joint issues and digestive issues, those are all the fruit on the tree. What we are interested in is the root of the tree. The root of the tree is where we can actually solve the problem instead of just dealing with the symptoms that we're experiencing on the branches. So when we can get down into the roots, we can pull up those habits, we can pull up the cause of disease and eradicate the problem. So when we're looking at the root, we have three root causes. The initial cause is that we forget that we're not just physical. We are actually spiritual beings. We are made up of ether element. We are etheric. We are not just tangible blood and bones and sinews and muscle. And so, as soon as we forget that we are spiritual beings, we jump right into the dramas of life. And then we get into the three causes of disease. The first cause is the misuse of the senses. So, what that really means is that we have these senses and we've been given these senses as a gateway into the body, the mind, and consciousness. They're kind of like a gift for all of us. We can take in different sensory input through sight, sound, smell, touch, and hearing. And when we take in this sensory input, it's either going to be harmonious and balance us, or it's going to throw us out of balance. Imagine you walk into a house and there is ruckus, loud rock and roll music going. There's tons of people all around. There's a lot of chaos. There's clutter. There's mess. You instantly have a reaction inside your mind and inside your body. For some people, it's strong. They might really have issues with all that noise and chaos, and they can immediately feel that tension. Other people have basically dulled their senses to a point that they don't even notice it, not even a problem. It may be that that's their house and they live in that chaos all the time and they are used to that and it's what they are comfortable with, but it's not the most harmonious for their bodies. So I want you to picture a plant. if a plant's in the right environment, gets all the right nutrients, it has good soil, it has sunlight, it's growing in the right temperature, it's going to have a deep, rich color. There's going to be a lot of blossoms. You're going to get a lot of fruit if it's a fruit plant. But if not, if you don't get all those things in the environment, it might still survive, but it is not going to thrive and reach its highest potential. So many of us are just surviving. We are trying to survive through the next day. We're trying to just make it to bedtime. We're trying to make it to Netflix time at night when we can just zone out and turn off all of our senses and just let our mind run wild. But our environment can actually bring us to our highest potential, and it can be really simple. Health does not have to be complicated. We make it so big and so complicated, but it's really very basic. What we take in through our five senses will bless us or it will bring us out of balance. So we can use everything from what we're smelling to what we're seeing, the texture and what we touch with our body, what we do with our physical body, as well as what we're listening to, the smells, everything that we bring into our body will affect us for good or for bad. So let's think of some individual senses here. When you're using the sense of aroma or smell, it immediately is going to bring back memories. There are actually aromas that can balance different doshas. So when your dosha's out of balance, you can inhale scents like sandalwood or rose or vetiver or lavender. They can bring you back into balance. And there's different scents for every dosha. Kind of cool, right? And we know this if we're tired and we want to go to sleep and we need to wind down, but we're feeling a little bit anxious, lavender can really calm us down. That's why they put it in bath soaps for babies to try and help them sleep at night. If you need a little bit more vibrancy or energy to your day, you're feeling a little sluggish mentally, peppermint is an awesome aroma for you to smell in order to get the mental fire going again. So we know that aroma can really help. But if we can use our senses properly and we can not abuse them, they can help us to be harmonious, because that's one of the causes of disease is an unwholesome conjunction of the senses. When you take in too much of what's damaging, you're unbalancing. When you're not getting enough of what's healing, it's damaging. So in Ayurveda, we utilize all the senses for therapy. I recommend to my clients taste therapy through their diet and their herbs. Touch therapy, maybe through a massage, self-massage, they call it abhyanga in Ayurveda. Visual therapy will actually do color meditations. So gold is a very sattvic color. It's very balancing and harmonious for all doshas. You could do a meditation where you're just gazing at a piece of gold fabric, breathing, letting that color become infused into you. So that's something you can do. Sound therapy. That's why we do mantras. That's why we listen to music that is in harmony with the different chakra vibrational energies. And then smell therapy through aromatherapy. So we use all five senses. No one is more important than the other. We try to use them all together. Okay, so that was your first cause of disease is the unwholesome conjunction of the senses, misuse of the senses. Okay, number two. Failure of the intellect. This is one we're all familiar with. We know if we eat less sugar, less processed food, less carbs, that we're probably going to lose those extra 5 pounds and feel a whole lot better. And yet, how many times do people make New Year's resolutions in January and by February 1st, geek, totally done? You stop doing them completely. It's because of failure of the intellect. We know what we need to do. We know what is best for us. We know that we should turn Netflix off at 9:30. And yet we all sit there and watch it much too late. Or we know that our food would better digest if we could just sit down for half an hour at lunch, eat calmly and slowly in a peaceful environment. Instead, we keep the computer on, answer just a couple more emails, or we find ourselves rushing down the freeway at 80 miles an hour, eating and stuffing food in our faces between appointments because we just can't possibly slow down long enough to feed ourselves in a proper manner, right? Those are all examples of failure of the intellect. Our intellect is connected to our senses and our soul. Both of them are going to send information to our mind so that we can make decisions. The senses desire pleasure. That is the problem. They want pleasure instead of pain. They're always going to be hunting for what's the best pleasure that we can have and how can we eliminate pain. But that's not always going to be the best thing for our intellect and our soul and our body. So we want to listen more to the higher self or the soul. The purpose of the soul is to take that information and pursue the highest ideals. The soul's not interested in pleasure or pain, but they're interested in becoming the best, highest self that we can be. So, from a Vedic or Ayurvedic perspective, that might mean enlightenment. From a Judeo Christian perspective, that means living a life that allows you to enter into the kingdom of heaven. So we have a lot of different definitions to what it means to follow the soul instead of the ego or the lower self. So you have to ask yourself a question. When you're making a decision, and where are you making the decision from? Are you making it from the ego, which speaks super loud? It's like, come on, eat that chocolate bar. You don't need to exercise. You should never meditate, right? Saying all those things. Whereas the soul is able to take a step back from the physical, and it's that pause. Wayne Dyer calls it getting in the gap. It's that little gap between the impulse and that decision. And if we can just listen to that whispering soul that tells us, hey, no, not a good choice. Let's go this way. Or, nope, we're going to turn the light off and we're going to go to bed now. Or, nope, instead of yelling and acting with criticism and upset right now, we're going to have compassion. We're going to have love. We're going to act from the soul, not from the ego. It's really hard to do. It's easy when things are going smooth and everything's going your way and there's no issues. But as soon as there becomes an obstacle in our life, it's really easy to figure out what is the easiest way out of suffering. What am I going to do to get the most pleasure from this situation instead of what is going to be the best for my soul? What's going to be the best and highest thing? The soul needs to be the louder voice. And the only way we're able to hear it is if we slow down and listen. It's really hard to do that, right? Our ego is attached to how we act now, not how we like to act or how we know deep inside that we should act to be healthy. The ego just wants the chocolate chip cookies. The ego just wants to have that coffee. The ego just wants to stay up late at night. And the ego does not want our best interest. In a way, it's kind of like hearing that ego is like, I know what you're up to. You're not having my highest interest at heart. So it's really not an enemy, but it's not your best friend. You don't want to listen to the ego. You want to definitely listen to the soul. Okay, so that is our second cause of disease is failure of the intellect, not listening to our intellect or our soul, instead just following the ego and seeking pleasure, avoiding pain. The first one was misuse of the senses. So those are our two so far. Last one is time. In Ayurvedic Sanskrit, we call this parinama. So it's the transformation or decay due to time and motion. There's two kinds of time. We got linear time. Linear time we can't do anything about. Linear time is the measurement of seconds, minutes, hours, days, years. You really can't do anything to slow down the process of linear time unless you suddenly become powerful enough to stop celestial motion. So you're not going to stop the sun in its path. You're not going to stop the earth. Time will move on, as we all know. But biological time is a little bit more interesting. That is the aging process. Okay, so a few years ago, my family and I were way into watching The Biggest Loser. Don't even know if that show's on TV anymore, but we used to watch it with great regularity, often while misusing our senses and eating something that was unhealthy. I know, well, I don't understand that, but we did that. So when we would watch this show, they would tend to bring the doctor in and they would kind of do a biological age example or test on these participants. And so these participants were typically quite heavy. They were usually pretty young, though. I mean, I think most of them usually were like 20s and 30s. And they would do these tests on them to see what their actual biological age was, not their linear age. And the majority of them were 20, 30, 40, 50 years older biologically than they actually were linear. So they might have been 25, but their internal body was saying that they were 50. And this was due to failure of the intellect and misuse of the senses. This is a huge example of when you forget your true nature as spirit You just start listening to the senses, you listen to the ego, and you let those things take over, that you age quicker. So biological time speeds up and slows down in accordance with our own personal motion and what we're up to. The faster you move, the faster you age. Think about this. The busier you become, the more stress you're under, right? So that's going to give a greater toll on your body. It's going to wear you out. Stress leads to cellular oxidation, too much oxygen in the cells, which is going to damage and age the cells of the body. So you're going to actually get older faster. It's really interesting because people often will take antioxidants. They're like, oh, I need antioxidants, even like face creams to slow aging. But they really need to treat the cause, right? The root of that tree, not the symptom of the aging. So it's a busy time of life. Most people are moving all the time. They're traveling a lot. They're commuting to and from work. They move as much physically as they do as far as mentally, and the mental motion can age you as well. When the mind moves from the present into the future or the past, it's creating age. It's aging you. When you aren't being here right now, you're actually speeding up motion in the mind and you're increasing your age. That sounds horrible. I think we should just live here now, right? That'd probably be better. So when the movement in the mind happens, you got lots of thoughts and feelings going on, then you're getting caught up in drama. Drama, drama, drama. There's actually no drama in the present. In the present moment, there's nothing but perfection. Wherever you're at right now when you're listening to this, there's no problems right now. You are just sitting here listening to a podcast about the cause of disease. Nothing more, nothing less. So when you are able to really be present here, you realize that any emotions that you're having occurred from the past. Anger occurs when your mind is in the past. Worry occurs when your mind is in the future. In the present moment, everything's good. Everything's fine. When you realize this, your mind and body can be filled with joy, love, bliss, and peace. We truly are searching for peace in Ayurveda. And we do this through mindfulness, through being here right now, through being present in this moment. And we do this in every activity. The goal of Ayurveda is to turn every action into a form of meditation. We want it to be something where when we're experiencing life in this moment, we are fully present. That could be yoga, that could be eating, that could be conversation with someone, it can even be driving down the road, it can be brushing your teeth, it can be lying in your bed getting ready to sleep, it can be working on a project at your office. Everything we do can take on that quality of sadhana or making something sacred and allowing us to slow down that biological time. In order to stop time, we must stop the mind and come into the present moment. Instead of jumping forward and reaching back, let's just be here now. I love that. Eckhart Tolle said that. Be here now instead of being in the future or in the past. In the Buddhist tradition, they call this mindfulness, and that means the meditation of life. So every action we take can be meditative and we can be in the present moment. We'll find when we do that the misuse of the senses and the failure of the intellect become less severe. Because if you're living right now, you're going to make a choice that's the best for you right in this moment. It doesn't mean we don't make plans. It doesn't mean we don't have goals and we don't have something we're looking forward to. But once we've made those plans, we're living here, experiencing what is happening on that journey right now. We're not jumping ahead 2 miles. We're staying here and enjoying each step while we're here. So I want to talk just a minute about stress because stress has a huge role in the cause of disease as well. When you're under stress, your mind becomes more negative. The energy pathways become blocked and your physiology gets abnormal. I mean, there's not functioning at the highest level. So you have a lot of physical and mental disease that can come just from having stress. Back in the 1950s, there was a book written called The Stress of Life. It was kind of the first time that anyone had talked about stress and its impact. And you think about life up until the 1950s, it was really different, of course, than today in 2019. If you think that they were worried about stress then, we have even more cause to worry about stress because of the way that we've structured our lives. Now, this all sounds a little bit stressful. I'm talking about stress and then I'm telling you all this stressful stuff. So I want you to realize that you are so much more empowered than you might think you are. There is no reason that we have to be a victim to our lives. We get to choose. even if we think we don't, you are choosing the life that you have. Think about that. All the choices you've made in the last 5 years have taken you where you are today. And the choices you're going to make in the next 5 years will put you in that place in 5 years. So, where do you want to be? Do you want to be living in the same situation you are now, where you are a victim to your ego, where you're succumbing to every sensation instead of controlling the senses? Do you want to be one that can't say no to pleasure? Like you just have to have pleasure, even when you know it's not in your highest best self? And do you want to biologically be aging at a pace that is out matching the linear age that you actually are? I personally would like to be 95 and out like surfing, even though I've never really surfed, but out doing something amazing physically and just pass from old age and have nothing wrong with me and just be like, my time's done. Going back to the creator. I think that would be awesome. And I believe that it is possible to live a life where we are able to overcome the ego. Now, I'm not unrealistic. I don't really think that you can do that 24/7, but I do know that the more that I meditate and that I practice yoga and that I'm mindful in the moment, even small things. Something that's made the biggest difference for me in my Ayurvedic journey is paying more attention when I'm eating. Most people that come to me as clients don't understand when I tell them that I want to focus on their food first and they have some big disease. I've got clients that are suffering from like fibromyalgia, and I have some that have IBS, and I've got some diabetic clients and some that are obese and want to lose weight. And I tell them all we're going to focus on digestion first. And the first step of that is not changing what you eat, it's changing how you eat. And they kind of look at me like I have two heads. And they're like, what? I thought you were going to give me a big, huge food list and tell me I couldn't have my Mountain Dew and my Butterfingers anymore. And I usually smile at them and say, well, those probably aren't the best choices for you. However, if you're going to eat those, I want you to do it with gratitude and mindfulness. And I want you to taste and enjoy fully every single sip and every single bite. And you will find that your body will absorb and digest what it needs from those nutrients and it will let go of the rest. And it might be that there's nothing it needs from that and it's just going to be able to let it go. But the emotional energy that we give to the food that we eat has a huge impact on how our body can use, absorb, and digest it. And I really believe that through that simple act of being mindful, sitting down, paying attention to your food, having gratitude for it, and actually tasting every single bite with no guilt. I don't care if all you're eating is In-N-Out burgers for the next week. I think you might feel crummy, but your body will absorb and use that better if you will sit, enjoy, eat, and have gratitude. So, as we leave one another today, let's just do a quick review. Primordial cause of disease is forgetting your true nature as spirit. When you forget that you're not just a physical being, then you fall prey to the three causes of disease, which are misuse of the senses. You're just becoming a tool for sensory impulse. You're just needing all this sensory impulse. Second one is failure of the intellect. So as soon as you start just following your senses, then you stop listening to your higher self, your soul, and you get caught up seeking pleasure, avoiding pain. You don't do anything to become your higher self because you're on this constant pleasure seeking wagon. Kind of like when Pinocchio went to Pleasure Island and then he becomes a donkey because he's just doing all these things for pleasure. Do you remember that story? So, failure of the intellect happening there. Third one is parinama or time. So, we want to slow down biological time. We want to slow the mind. We want to slow our actions, slow down our schedule. There's a book I have been reading and it's awesome. It's called Change Your Schedule, Change Your Life by Dr. Suhas Shrirshagar. And it's amazing. I think it's one of the most impactful books and the most simple to apply Ayurveda into your life. Change your schedule, change your life. I'll put it in the show notes. But I want you to just know that even though this seems daunting, you can take this one step at a time, one moment at a time, and you will be amazed at how impactful something as simple as sitting down and eating breakfast calmly every morning will create a ripple effect in your life. And you will see that in everything from your health to your sleep to your relationships. And you'll start to overcome some of these things that are keeping you in an unhealthy, unbalanced state. Have a beautiful day, my friends. I hope that everything in your life is heading you down a path towards svasta or greater health, perfect health. Have a wonderful day. Namaste. Before you go, was this episode helpful for you? Well, the most helpful thing you can do in return is to leave a review in iTunes. The reviews are what keep the podcast going. And be sure to subscribe and share this episode if you loved it. If you want to connect on social media, you can find me on Instagram at Heather Johnson Maya Life or Facebook at Heather White Johnson or online at maya-life.com. Namaste.